Robby, what is on your radar this morning?
Well, Claudine Gay has resigned as president of Harvard University, though she will keep her job as a faculty member in the political science department and her $900,000 a year salary. Well, that's something of an achievement, given that her misdeeds were academic in nature. Gay was caught plagiarizing numerous passages from other scholars. But in some corners of the media, the fact that she committed plagiarism matters much less than the reality that it was conservative writers who caught her. The Washington Free Beacon's Aaron Sibarium, a reporter at a right-leaning news website, performed the lion's share of the digging. Christopher Brunette, a conservative writer, Christopher Rufo, a conservative writer and activist, and also Phil Magnus, a libertarian economic historian, also made important contributions. Astonishingly, some mainstream standards keepers have decided that the ideologies of the accusers have essentially discredited the accusations. Cue the Associated Press, which posted the following remarkable observation on X, formerly Twitter. Harvard president's resignation highlights new conservative weapon against colleges, plagiarism. That tweet is doubly wrong. It inadvertently suggests that plagiarism is the weapon conservatives are wielding, as if conservatives are the ones committing plagiarism when the so-called weapon is actually plagiarism allegations. In either case, the framing is ludicrous. Conservatives did not invent this idea. On the contrary, many mainstream journalists have made entire careers of digging up speeches, books, and articles written by conservatives and others and checking them for plagiarism. To take just one prominent and seemingly forgotten example, consider Andrew Kaczynski, a reporter for CNN. Kaczynski is a prolific discoverer of plagiarism committed by conservatives. He exposed conservative television personality Monica Crowley, right-wing sheriff David Clark, and many, many others. His work was ignored because it is. Should we ignore his work because it is on some level politically motivated? Of course not. To his credit, Kaczynski actually criticized the AP's framing. CNN has, it should be noted, made perfectly worthwhile contributions to the Gay plagiarism story. To make things abundantly clear, the media has never chosen to ignore a plagiarism scandal or write it off as trivial or unfair merely because the accuser has a political agenda. Plagiarism allegations derailed the 1988 presidential campaign of then-Senator Joe Biden, who was accused by the New York Times and others of copying elements of a speech by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock. Biden also copied from both John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy and, quote, did something very stupid, his words, in law school when he stole 5 pages from a law review article and submitted them as part of a legal brief. You would have to have been born yesterday to think that allegations of plagiarism are a new political weapon invented by conservatives. Oh, and if the tweet from the AP weren't bad enough, the media outlet also criticized Christopher Rufo for saying that Gay had been scalped on X. Now, you can certainly say that was inappropriate language, absolutely 100%. But the AP described the word scalped as invoking a gruesome practice taken up by white colonists who sought to eradicate Native Americans. When about 1,000 people pointed out on social media that the Native Americans, among other groups to be sure, were the ones known for scalping, the AP stealth-edited their article, as in they changed it without making any acknowledgement of correction, to begrudgingly admit that the practice was, quote, used by some tribes against their enemies. Now, as a journalist, I thought it was standard practice that when you make a mistake, you not only correct it, but you note at the bottom or the top of the article that you've done so. Maybe the AP feels differently? Alas, other aspects of the media narrative surrounding Gay's ouster are just as depressing. Multiple commentators have decided that Gay was ultimately forced out because of racism. New York Times opinion writer Mara Gay, no relation as far as I know, said that Gay's critics were actually attacking diversity and multiculturalism. Let's watch.
It's an attack on people who are pluralists and believe that you should bring people from all over the world together of diverse backgrounds, and that you actually have more scholarly rigor and more value can be brought by having people from different backgrounds. This is an attack on diversity. This is an attack on multiculturalism and on many of the values that a lot of us hold dear. And in fact, anybody really who is around my age in their 30s who went to any major public university or private university in this country, you know, these are values that are very important.
Mara Gay later says that, quote, "You can see and hear the racism." The Times' Nicole Hannah-Jones expressed similar sentiments. Reverend Al Sharpton said the departure of Gay was an attack on every black woman, and Ibram X. Kendi, an anti-racist scholar, blamed a, quote, "racist mob." Is it racist to demand that the president of Harvard University be held to the same standard as other faculty members, the same standard as her students? Harvard takes plagiarism very seriously when students are concerned. As one member of Harvard College's Honor Council wrote in an editorial for the Harvard Crimson, "There is one standard for me and my peers and another much lower standard for our university's president," obviously writing that before she did, in fact, resign. Now, saying that Gay was ousted because she's a black woman is insulting to hardworking scholars of all races and sexes. She was the president of the most elite educational institution in the country, was finally held accountable for obvious and verifiable academic wrongdoing, and she's still going to be teaching for some reason. I'll just conclude by noting yet again that yes, it is true that the individuals who first called attention to Gay's plagiarism have a political agenda, and you are free to reject that agenda. If they make accusations that are unfair, you should reject them. But everyone in the media is serving a political agenda. Were the people who made similar allegations against Neil Gorsuch political actors? Of course they were. I'm sure this was true of the 40-year-old accusations against Joe Biden as well. I think that many in the media are simply taken aback that some conservatives are finally playing the same game that they have been playing for a long while.
So first, I'd just like to say that you cited Gorsuch just there and Joe Biden. I would also add Alan Dershowitz and Charles Ogletree as Harvard professors who have faced plagiarism allegations. But I would cite them and make a point of distinction between them and Claudine Gay, insofar as they never received any professional ramifications for them. Quite to the contrary, when Norm Finkelstein documented extensively and had corroborated the not just bad citations or failure to rework, but outright misrepresentations in Alan Dershowitz's own work. Dershowitz then turned around and lobbied universities to not give Norm Finkelstein a faculty position and set out to ruin his career. So quite to the opposite, the person who was canceled in that scenario, who suffered consequences, was the person who pointed out the plagiarism, who was much less powerful and much less senior in academia, not Dershowitz. And of course, Gorsuch is on the Supreme Court. Biden is president of the United States, and Charles Ogletree finished out his life as an esteemed Harvard professor before he recently passed away. So I'm not really sure if we're getting to the bottom of what people are concerned about. The concern isn't that plagiarism happened and that it's not perfectly fine to investigate plagiarism. The problem is whether or not, because of big moneyed interests who are interested in not having any validation or support of Palestinian students on Harvard campuses, Claudine Gay became a specific target. And Christopher Rufo specifically speaks to that idea. He has announced that, quote, this is from a tweet of his, quote, "I am contributing an initial $10,000 to a plagiarism hunting fund. We will expose the rot in the Ivy League and restore truth rather than racist ideology as the highest principle in academic life." Now, if that fund were applied evenly across the board to all academia, I think that would be a reasonable agenda. However, as he's made it very clear, as he's been announcing what his agenda actually is to the press, he said this to Politico following Claudine Gay's resignation. He said, this also goes to your point where you say that this is nothing novel. Christopher Rufo seems to feel differently as he's celebrating the success of his own strategy that he's innovated here. He says, it shows a successful strategy for the political right, how we have to work the media, how we have to exert pressure, and how we have to sequence our campaigns in order to be successful. And when asked in that same Political article whether he would take credit for it, he says, yes, of course I'll take credit, but also it was a multi-pronged strategy. He says first was the narrative leverage, and this was done primarily by me, Christopher Brunette, and Aaron Sabrarium. Second was the financial leverage, which was led by Bill Ackman and other Harvard donors. So specifically, getting in league with all of these Harvard donors who wanted to withdraw money from Harvard, specifically on the issue of Israel-Palestine. And third, the political leverage, the hearing with Elise Stefanik. So all of those things together, to me, suggest that Christopher Rufo is not shy and would not, frankly, agree with your characterization of this as the same old, same old. He's quite proud of this being a political project that is in cahoots with or in working alongside the political project of quashing any anti-Zionist speech on college campuses, but to use this as a cudgel, to use plagiarism accusations as a cudgel. And I wonder if that is any concern to you, since this is going to be an ongoing project. They have announced the MIT professor is next on the list, even though obviously she has had no plagiarism allegations against her. And I would suspect that if you really believed that this was an academic integrity issue, you would not stop at Claudine Gay being resigning from the president of Harvard. You would not want her to teach. Teaching is a much more significant job for having academic integrity than being an administrator of a university. So does none of that impress upon you that the goals here are more about quashing a certain kind of speech on campus than about sincerely trying to maintain an academic integrity at these kinds of institutions?
Well, I mean, on that last point, I agree, in fact, that she should not be teaching. I thought my monologue was gesturing at that. I mean, imagine if a student submits a paper with as many sloppy, lazy, copying examples as she has been found to. What are they supposed to do about that? Look, I can't speak for the motivations of others. I think Christopher Rufo is very eager to take credit for what happened. Aaron Sibarium, the reporter from the Washington Free Beacon, again, did the vast majority of the work in bringing to light true examples of plagiarism. And as the foremost leader of the institution, I think she should be held accountable for that. In those other cases, I haven't looked specifically at them, but those people should have been held accountable. I'm not here to defend any of them. That is absolutely fine, and I can only talk about what it is for me. And if they try to fire these other presidents and it's over BS, then I will say it's BS. But in this example, they found something tangible, and I don't know what to say but to conclude that she has to go based on that.
I'll say this. I don't actually think Claudine Gay would have resigned if not for the Bill Ackman piece. And Glenn Greenwald has been very clear on this too, and so was Norm Finkelstein, really emphasizing how much of the pressure campaign really hurt the pocketbook of an institution like Harvard University, and that it's the threat to withdraw money. And the threat to withdraw money, the articulated goals of someone like Bill Ackerman are very clear.
But the institution is not owed anyone's money. It's their money to spend as they see fit.
So if you think it's a good and right thing that one should cheer on, that billionaires who give to colleges can influence the free speech direction of what's happening on those colleges and basically put a mark on any college president or any faculty member conceivably who doesn't agree with their own politics, well, that's fine. But I think that's a pretty disastrous, that augurs pretty disastrous things for the future of free speech on
Well, and you know how much I care about the
America.
future of free speech on college campuses in America. The guest you brought on yesterday said that Claudine Gay was not actually a very esteemed protector of pro-Palestinian
She
speech.
wasn't.
Let me just finish one thing. And also, again, Harvard, as I repeatedly noted, ranks dead last. I know she wasn't there very long, but ranks dead last on free speech ratings by an organization that absolutely does care about pro-Palestinian speech and has criticized the censorship of pro-Palestinian
Right.
speech. So then that makes, from a free speech perspective, defending her not seem important to me, and then also we have the academic violations.
But what matters is not how good Claudine Gay actually was. I mean, it matters to me as someone
it does
who,
matter to me.
It matters. I just said it matters
Okay,
to me.
okay.
Those are words that just came out of my mouth.
Okay.
It matters to me as someone who substantively wants to protect the rights of Palestinians, who we should all remember. Palestinian students were shot in America because of their beliefs, and one is paralyzed for their lives. That should be the priority of these kinds of conversations.
Hang the perpetrators.
However, the media attention is on these kinds of things. And so I personally think that Claudine Gay, she still, even in her resignation, did not say the word Palestine, did not advocate for the rights of the students who are being pressured on campus, is still hook, line, and sinker in line with the interest, still trying to cover for the interest that got her removed from the presidency. And she has limited sympathy for me in that regard. But this isn't about sympathy for Claudine Gay. It's about the fact that the perception was, especially following that conservative hearing with Elise Stefanik and that questioning, that she was insufficiently deferent to a pro-Zionist viewpoint. That was the perception. Obviously, that's what she was being criticized for, regardless of whether or not it was true. And I think that what it shows is actually more damning, because even someone who wasn't especially sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, if you're even marginally protective of an idea of neutrality at his school, you still can get the axe. You can still be the target of a multi-million-dollar backed vindictive campaign to enforce one view on campus. Even if you're not me, even if you're not some crusader for Palestinian rights, that still doesn't save you from getting the hook. And that, to me, is even that much more damning.
All right, well, we've talked this issue to death. We'll let the viewers decide what they think. More Rising right after this.